In 1971, a young woman's life changed forever when she found herself falling from the sky in a huge storm. This woman was Julianne Coep, the sole survivor of a tragic plane crash in the Peruvian rainforest. Julianne Coep had no idea what awaited her when she boarded LANSA Flight 508 on December 24, 1971. In those years, LANSA Airlines was a company frequently criticized for its safety measures in Latin America. Flight 508 was a very old Lockheed Electra model. At that time, flights in Peru were completely full due to the Christmas holiday and the weather was getting progressively worse. Passengers boarding Flight 508 could see lightning dancing among the clouds when they looked out the window as the flight attendants prepared the coffee service. The tremors began to show. Everything was about to change completely in just a few seconds. 17-year-old Julianne was traveling with her mother from Lima, Peru to the eastern city of Pucallpa to visit her father, who worked as a zoologist in the Amazon rainforest. Julianne had received her high school diploma just one day before the flight and planned to study zoology just like her parents. However, the flight, which was supposed to last only an hour, turned into a nightmare. In a very short time, about 25 minutes after takeoff, the plane was struck by lightning while flying through severe turbulence 6,300 meters above the Amazon rainforest. Terrified, Julianne held on to her mother sitting next to her. The young girl heard her mother say, "Now it's all over," but just then, as the plane began to break apart in mid-air, Julianne Coep and the seat she was strapped to separated from the disintegrating aircraft and suddenly fell 10,000 feet, hitting a canopy. Yes, Julianne had fallen more than 3 kilometers to the ground while strapped to her seat. Julianne's seat was connected in a row of 3. This structure spun in the air, creating a parachute effect and slowing her descent. Also, the dense canopy and tree branches of the Amazon rainforest slowed the impact somewhat, so in a sense nature had embraced her that day instead of destroying her. About 10 hours after the impact, the young girl miraculously woke up alive on the forest floor. When she woke up, she had fallen 3,000 meters into the middle of the Peruvian rainforest and had only minor injuries. She didn't know it yet, but 91 passengers on the plane along with the crew had died, and yes, only she had survived. However, the flight, which was supposed to last only an hour, turned into a nightmare. In a very short time, about 25 minutes after takeoff, the plane was struck by lightning while flying through severe turbulence 6,300 meters above the Amazon rainforest. Terrified, Julianne held on to her mother sitting next to her. The young girl heard her mother say, "Now it's all over," but just then, as the plane began to break apart in mid-air, Julianne Coep and the seat she was strapped to separated from the disintegrating aircraft and suddenly fell 10,000 feet, hitting a canopy. Yes, Julianne had fallen more than 3 kilometers to the ground while strapped to her seat. Julianne's seat was connected in a row of 3. This structure spun in the air, creating a parachute effect and slowing her descent. Also, the dense canopy and tree branches of the Amazon rainforest slowed the impact somewhat, so in a sense nature had embraced her that day instead of destroying her. About 10 hours after the impact, the young girl miraculously woke up alive on the forest floor. When she woke up, she had fallen 3,000 meters into the middle of the Peruvian rainforest and had only minor injuries. She didn't know it yet, but 91 passengers on the plane along with the crew had died, and yes, only she had survived. Julianne Coep had miraculously managed to survive the impact, but her story was not over yet. Dizzy from a concussion and the shock she had experienced, the young girl could only grasp the basic facts. She knew she had survived a plane crash and that one of her eyes could not see very well. She had a damaged eye due to the sudden change in air pressure, and her capillaries had burst. Besides her eye, she had a broken collarbone, a deep cut on her arm, and a severe concussion. Julianne spent the rest of that day unconscious. She was so injured and weak that she was too powerless to lift herself from the seat she was strapped to. 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours passed, and it took her half a day to get to her feet. When she finally regained her strength, her first priority was to find her mother. Searching was very difficult as her glasses were gone and one eye was swollen, but she couldn't have saved her mother or anyone else from that wreckage anyway. Let's think you are 17 years old, moreover you are a girl, and you survive a fall from 3,000 meters. Even if there were other survivors from that wreckage, what kind of help could they expect from such a profile? On top of all this, you are in the wild Amazon rainforest while all this is happening. So under these circumstances, young Julianne had accepted that she could not save her mother. Days later, she learned that her mother had also survived the crash and stayed alive for a few days but died before help arrived. This knowledge turned into a feeling of guilt that Julianne carried. She did not want to talk about this event at all and relived that fall over and over in her sleep. After first aid at the hospital, she reached a small aid camp where she stayed for a few days. Here she received medical help and food again and finally flew to Pucallpa, her original destination, to meet her father. Julianne Coep had become the sole survivor of 92 passengers and crew. As I explained, she later learned that 14 other passengers including her mother had survived the fall but died in the following days while waiting to be rescued. Thanks to Julianne's help, the bodies of all passengers were recovered and buried in a cemetery in Yarinacocha. The young girl's unlikely survival became the subject of much speculation. Experts stated that she survived the fall thanks to being strapped to her seat, the window seat. The seat was attached to the two seats to its left as part of a three-seat row. It is said that this seat row acted as a parachute or helicopter, slowing its descent. After the traumatic accident, life was very difficult for Julianne Coep. She became a media sensation and was not always portrayed in a sensitive light. She developed a deep fear of flying and had recurring nightmares for years, but just as in the jungle, she managed to overcome these obstacles. By 1980, she studied biology at the University of Kiel in Germany and subsequently received her doctorate. She returned to Peru to conduct research in the field of mammalogy shortly after she married and took the name Julianne Diller. In 1998, she returned to the crash site for the documentary Wings of Hope, which told her incredible story on the flight with director Werner Herzog. She again sat in seat 19F. She later said this experience was therapeutic. She was able to focus on the event from a distance and captured a sense of closure that she said she still hadn't quite grasped. This experience led her to write her memoir When I Fell from the Sky, which recounts the extraordinary story of her survival. Julianne Coep says that nature is both a destructive and a protective force. When describing her experiences, perhaps that is why nature did not punish her when she fell through the clouds that day. It only tested her. Although she has overcome the trauma of the event, there is still one question that remains in her mind even today. Why was she the only survivor? Julianne says this question is still on her mind, and as she said in the movie, miracles still happen, it always will be. In a 2021 interview with the New York Times, she said, I grew up knowing that nothing, not even the solid ground I walk on, is truly safe. Memories have repeatedly helped me keep my composure even in difficult situations, she said. Julianne, when she said memory, she was referring to the heartbreaking experience she had in 1971. On that fateful day, the flight was scheduled to last an hour, but a tragedy occurred just 25 minutes into the journey. Now, if you didn't understand how shocking the event was, rewind the video and watch it again, because this is not just an ordinary story. This is the life story of a person full of choices and tragedies who had to survive under those conditions.
Im selben Moment, in dem wir dieses Licht sahen, das uns blendete, jetzt ist alles aus. Das waren die letzten Worte, die ich von ihr hörte. Ich selber habe eigentlich gar nicht reagieren können. Dann ist alles so schnell geschehen. Die Maschine machte einen Satz nach oben und stürzte dann senkrecht in die Tiefe.
Einem Freiflug von über 3000 Metern landet die Maschine irgendwann auf dem Boden. 92 Insassen sind an Bord, 91 davon sind tot. Die eine junge Frau, die damals 17 ist, überlebt.